So when I'd made my last video, I personally believed that the reveal of the next generation Switch was anywhere from 2 weeks to 2 months away. But as of this morning, things got a lot more interesting because there is a new report coming from Nate the Hate, of all people, claiming that potentially the Switch 2 is going to be revealed this week, and even more specifically, that it'll be revealed this Thursday, January 16th, which would be the same day as Donkey Kong Country Returns HD. Potentially huge news and a major bomb. If this is true, this definitely changes, I think, what a lot of us expected to happen with Nintendo's reveal plans for their next generation console. It's kind of funny how this played out, too, because I woke up early this morning, started doing a little bit of work, and I kind of saw that there was like a report or two and like a couple tweets and posts claiming that, oh, maybe it's going to happen this week and maybe it's going to happen on Thursday. And I was like, that's just crazy. That doesn't make any sense. And then as I was working by chance, I happened to just pull up and start listening to Nate and MVG's new podcast. And they started talking about it. Suddenly, Nate was like, yeah, so I have heard that it's going to be on Thursday the 16th this week. And I was like, oh, okay, Nate is the source for those tweets and posts that I was reading a little bit ago. So I had to wait for a little bit of time to be free to be able to talk about this. I listened to more of their conversation, and I looked into some of the other reports and stuff and what people were saying about it, so that now I feel like I can talk about it and sort of add my own color commentary to this whole thing, because it's crazy for a lot of reasons. And one of the biggest ones is the fact that, like I mentioned here, they would be revealing it the same day as their first big game for the year, for 2025. Now, as I've discussed and we all already know, their first big game for 2025 is nothing more than an HD port of a 15-year-old game. So it's like, it's a first-party game, it's a first-party Nintendo IP and character, and it's also a great game. The original Donkey Kong Country Returns on the Wii, which I own and I've been playing for the past year or so, just off and on again. It's a great game. So it's a high-quality release, but it's not like a major new tentpole Switch 2025 release. It's just a really old port. That being said, it is still the first target date in the 2025 year for Nintendo to be doing or releasing anything, and even with ports and remasters and remakes of older games, Nintendo usually likes to give those releases some time to breathe. And so the idea of them also revealing the next generation console on the same day, on the surface, seems like it would just take the wind out of the sails of Donkey Kong Country and its ability to be successful or whatever. At least for people who might be picking it up last minute, I think that it's still going to do okay, because Switch 2 is going to be backwards compatible. I've said this for a long time. Being backwards compatible means it shouldn't really impact people's willingness to buy Switch 1 titles. But I do think in terms of, I guess, the marketing cycle, the media attention, what a weird thing to do. Like, Donkey Kong kind of gets buried on its own release day in the news cycle simply because Nintendo's next generation console is announced. That's a way bigger story than an old port. Either way, this is what's happening. This is what Nate is reporting. And I know Nate the Hate and I know MVG, not really well, but I used to do a lot of podcasts and Spawncast episodes with those guys over the years, many years ago. I haven't talked to them in a very long time, but I have talked to them both on live stream podcasts and offline, before and after podcasts. Great guys, very trustworthy. No one would ever claim that they know everything to be 100% fact, but I can say that Nate definitely believes what he says. And even listening to the podcast, again, I heard him start talking about it before I realized he was the source to the article headlines I was seeing like 30 minutes earlier. So it was crazy how it happened. And he certainly seems very confident. So it's not fact, as we always like to say. We don't know for sure. But Nate is the kind of person that, I don't know, in my experience, he talks with this kind of confidence about this date being this Thursday, or at least this week. And anything could happen, but it certainly feels pretty believable to me just hearing him and MVG discuss it. Obviously, I'm going to link that podcast below, so go and listen to it. Actually listen to the source, give them a view and stuff on the YouTube channel, on their podcast and whatnot, because you should do that. But now that we know all those details, now we get to discuss what the heck is going on. Is this real? Is this exciting or not exciting? Good idea, bad idea? What's going on with the Donkey Kong situation? So, I'll be honest, as somebody who's just a fan waiting to get my eyes and hands on the Switch 2 as soon as possible, it's exciting to think about because this week is better than next week, which would be better than the following week, right? We just want it as early as possible. And so if the Switch 2 truly was going to be revealed this week, great, bring it on. What does that mean for Donkey Kong Country Returns, as I've already discussed? I already own the game on the Wii, so I had no intention of purchasing the Switch port. It's a great game, like I mentioned, so I would certainly like to see people who've never played it get a chance to buy and enjoy it on the Switch, and I think that most people who want it will buy and enjoy it on the Switch, but again, I do feel like it might just hurt the general attention of the game if Nintendo chooses to do this. Why would they do this would be my question. And obviously, in like 4 days, this conversation will be rendered moot, because if they don't do it, then none of this matters and it was just wrong in the first place. But if we talk about it, assuming it might happen, why would they do it the same day as the first release of the year for the current Switch? I honestly can't answer that question. I mean, I think about it, I search my soul. Nintendo, why would you do this? And I don't have an answer. Now, here's one of the more interesting pieces of news coming from Nate and MVG's discussion about this. Nate claims that as he understands, the reveal will probably focus less on games and more on the hardware and the console itself. That, to me, if true, is an interesting and kind of confusing concept. And admittedly, on the podcast, Nate himself thinks it's a little bit strange and that it doesn't make sense, and even considers that it might be incomplete information. So I do want to put that out there, that even Nate, as he discusses what he's heard, is kind of saying that this doesn't really make a lot of sense. It's what I've heard, but maybe I'm missing some information. So I just want to put that out there as well. Again, listen to their podcast to hear them talk about it. But the idea that this week, on Thursday, same day as Donkey Kong, they only really show us the system and not games, and that might even include that they wouldn't give us a date or a price. If it played out that way, I'm not going to lie, I'd be pretty disappointed, because at this point, what the Switch 2 is really not all that interesting anymore, unfortunately, only because the mystery and the answers and so much information has gotten out there. You know, obviously not all of it's real, but if even some of the chaos of leaks and rumors over the past year has been real, again, even some of them, then we know enough to know it's just a bigger Switch with slightly different magnetic Joy-Cons, and that's it. And it's a little bit more powerful. Like, if that's all they have to show us about the Switch 2, and maybe the little mouse IR optical sensor thing, like, that's cool. So if that's all they have to show us, then I don't want the reveal to just be 5 minutes of showing us a Switch that looks almost the same as old Switches, and they're just promising us that it's more powerful, and then they'll tell us, we'll show you more games and give you the release date later. Like, if that's how they reveal this thing, just speaking for me personally, I'm going to be pretty disappointed. I think it's one of the few negatives of Nintendo playing it safe and just making a more powerful, better version of the Switch, because that means that the hardware itself isn't really part of the excitement. And in all prior console generations, Nintendo or otherwise, they're usually so different in how they look and what the controllers might be like, especially with Nintendo consoles. What the power is going to be, that the hardware itself is always part of the excitement of a new generation on top of the games. This time, unless Nintendo surprises us and it's not at all what we think, if it's just a more powerful Switch that's a little bit bigger, then that means the hardware literally is the least exciting part about it. And like, that's fine. It takes away some of the generation transition hype, but it is what it is. But again, that would just mean if what Nate is saying he heard is even kind of true, then that's lame, man, because I think that most of you guys would agree that we want to see the games. Like, show us the Switch, the Joy-Cons, give us like 2 minutes of like surface level details of how it's different and slightly better and whatever, and let us be excited about that. And then you gotta talk about some games. Talk about Metroid Prime 4. Show us a launch title, maybe a few launch titles. Talk about third-party support. Show us a new Mario game if that's coming, or a Mario Kart, as we all think. All these things. If a franchise like F-Zero or Kid Icarus is making a return, or Star Fox, let us know that if you can. Stuff that's hopefully going to be releasing within the following year of the Switch releasing, right? Like, don't do a Metroid Prime 4 thing where you promise something so far out we don't know if we'll ever see it. But I'm sure that they have enough to show us early on in the Switch's life that's pretty far in development that they could confidently show us these games. And so I think this reveal, I don't want it to be bare bones, and I don't want them to leave out games. Show us the console, focus on the games, give me more Metroid Prime 4 Beyond, please, and show us a release date and a price. Get that stuff out the very first time, Nintendo. You show the world this thing, you've got to give us these essential details. It is like, it's important for your business, like beyond just being gamers who are like selfish and please just give us the things we want selfishly. If you actually think about it totally objectively, it's better for Nintendo too. It's better for your business and your investors and all the nonsense corporate crap that comes with being a billion-dollar company. Like, do it for yourselves as well as for us, the fans. I gotta see games. I want to know the price. And even more than the price, I want to know the dang date. Because as I discussed on a video recently, we all know it's going to be a mad dash to try to buy a frickin' Switch 2 and reserve a Switch 2 before bots and scalpers and anyone else just gets one before we do. So for now, I think that's about all I have. This was a crazy thing to wake up to. First day of the week, Monday morning, and suddenly we're learning that very likely, not confirmed, but very likely the Switch 2 is releasing this week, or revealed this week, same day as Donkey Kong, potentially. Weird news. Maybe there won't be games. It's only going to be the console. Like, what the heck? Still would be exciting, but obviously we'd want a lot more than that. So, I don't know, man. The sky's the limit at this point. Every day it's something new and something different. But, you know, when Nate talks this way, I listen, and that's why I chose to discuss it on a video, because I think that it's important and it feels very, very valid. So, look, it's an exciting week no matter what happens. So let's just cross our fingers and hope that maybe, Donkey Kong be damned, they actually show us the Switch 2 this week.